With all the latest news and stories that matter right now in footy, it's Tom Browne's News.
A massive afternoon, good afternoon in footy news today, Thursday. Welcome, first off. COVID news. It's affecting a number of clubs, most notably West Coast and Adelaide in some respects. I'll get to that very shortly. Also want to discuss some big ins this weekend. Also, I wouldn't say a controversial one, but some interesting comments from a concussion campaigner, Peter Jess, which I'll play for you regarding Paddy McCartan. Also give you the latest on the Tasmania situation. Gill back in the country as soon as today. There's some interesting comments on that. And also the Bombers want to discuss their situation at the end of this podcast as well. But I'll kick off with COVID today. St Kilda, Brett Ratton has confirmed that a couple of senior assistants, Lade and Enright, won't participate this weekend under protocols, nor will Nick Walsh, their highly regarded fitness boss. There's a view at the Saints they might have picked it up in Cairns a few days ago, obviously, for their game. It's COVID, who knows? But no players impacted at the Saints as yet, but a couple of big outs in terms of their assistants and indeed their fitness boss. At Fremantle, up to 6 players will miss this weekend. At West Coast, it also looks like they'll have to go to their top-up waffle list again. But the big ones, of course, at Adelaide, and I'll get to West Coast. Adelaide, Matthew Nicks will miss this weekend under protocols. And at West Coast, this came across my desk this morning. I had calls into the club, but I think it's pretty much confirmed now on social media as well. Ryan Daniels has tweeted it that, that Adam Simpson will miss this weekend through protocol. So it's been a very difficult week for the Eagles, compounded, of course, now by the fact that their coach is out under protocols this weekend. They have got some highly regarded assistants, of course, but Simpson will now miss at least 7 days through those protocols. So COVID continues, particularly as we obviously come into winter and with the Western Australian situation, to impact clubs significantly. But Nicks and Simpson at Adelaide and West Coast will both miss this weekend. Just additionally, I'm backtracking slightly regarding the COVID situation. I've also put in a call to the Melbourne Footy Club. I think there's a view across some of my messages this morning. They might have a couple of assistant coaches also impacted by the protocols this weekend. I'll update that on social media if that's a story this afternoon. In terms of some big ins, some massive ins, they don't get any bigger really this weekend. Patrick Dangerfield will return for the Cats from his calf complaints. I reckon they really need him back as well. So he'll return this weekend. Chris Scott effectively confirming that. Dustin Martin will be back against Collingwood for Richmond. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Dusty just had to get through training this morning, so barring any issues there, he'll play this weekend. Paddy McCartan is also set to return from his 9th concussion. I spoke to concussion campaigner, there's a lot of C's there, Peter Jess regarding that issue yesterday, and Jess doesn't think that McCartan should play again. His strong view is that McCartan has an increased risk of a 10th concussion. He's effectively going back into footy, knowing he's likely to cop another head knock. And Jess cited some research that says that the chances of concussion issues are proportionately significantly higher, up to 50% higher after 3 concussions. McCartan's now in risk of getting his 10th concussion. Jess also warned that currently there's no long-term protection in place from a health or financial perspective for players that suffer concussion. This is partly what Jess had to tell me.
No, I think he should seriously consider whether he plays again. I mean, what we know from the science and medicine, that a traumatic brain problem has significant later life problems, and I'm not sure whether all of that has been taken into consideration.
Jess also pointed out that the return to play protocols, which is the length of time that you need to miss under the current guidelines, is uncertain scientifically, and in some instances, some parts of it are being effectively reviewed by the AFL as part of its concussion review. So that's Peter Jess's view. I hasten to add clearly that the Sydney doctors will do all their precautions and go through all the checks. They're one of the most professional, if not the most professional club in many respects in the AFL. So no slight or criticism of the Swans, but that's just Peter Jess's view from a long-term perspective. The other interesting one today, of course, was Josh Caddy, who was retired, a magnificent player, double premiership player for the Tigers. So he's officially retired as of today. But some massive ins this weekend. We expect Danger, Martin and Paddy McCartan to all return. There's a little bit of a trade war going on between Essendon and St Kilda. I wouldn't describe it as a war, but they're firing a few salvos at each other. Just for some context, St Kilda recently bid up on Sam Draper. Of course, Draper recommitted to the Bombers, but that did drive up his price. The Bombers have expressed interest, I've reported, in Rowan Marshall. clearly Marshall would complement Draper at the Bombers, and they could do the Bombers with another, at least one or two tall forwards and or a ruckman, or both. So, look, the interest isn't surprising. I think Marshall's highly likely, if not certain, to stay at St Kilda. But I have reported that the Bombers have expressed interest on Marshall this week. James Sicily's another interesting one. I mean, he's been Hawthorn's stand-in captain. He's currently ranked as the 7th or 8th best defender in the league, according to Champion Data. He's in the top 10 in the coaches' votes. I think he told The Age last night that he's in no rush to free agency to decide on his Hawthorn future anytime soon. But there's a lot of interest in him. There's a strong view amongst a number of sources this morning that Collingwood, through Graham Wright, who has a link back to Hawthorn, have expressed interest in James Sicily. Look, I don't think Collingwood is formally interested in James Sicily, but I do think there's a lot of clubs interested in James Sicily. Again, I think he's likely to stay at Hawthorn, but I think it'll be a source of discussion, certainly in the next couple of months, because he's playing good football, he's a key defender, he's a free agent, and that free agency space is certainly heating up. I don't think Collingwood officially interested, but it's certainly been going around, I think in the last day or so, that they've, I think, made inquiries. So I think that's all I would say at this stage in regards to that. He's likely to stay at Hawthorn Sicily, but there's a lot of interest in the Hawk superstar. My phone lit up on Tuesday night. Gil McLaughlin in New York. He was at a Jewish ceremony, which is an all-round ceremony, to celebrate the Rabbi Schneerson's 120th birthday. Naomi Campbell even tweeted from the Rabbi's 120th birthday ceremony location there in New York. But there was a picture, which you might have seen on social media and indeed the news, of Gil. And I think that he'd gone there with a couple of friends in New York and gone there to mark that occasion, and I'm told learnt a lot. But the point is, he was in New York and he's back as soon as today because he's got a lot on his agenda. He's got the TV deal, he's got the players' pay deal, he's got the club deal, and also the Tasmanian decision. Some interesting comments from James Warburton, the CEO of Seven, yesterday at a conference. He said, quote, "We will not blow our brains out by doing ridiculous sports deals," unquote, and did explain, which I find the numbers and all this really interesting. According to James Warburton, who's the CEO of Seven West Media and has really driven up the share price, he's very much across all these things. He did explain, just from a numbers perspective, that if Paramount, which is effectively Channel 10, their parent company, were to pay what Foxtel's currently paying for the pay rights, he said they'd need 3 million subscribers at around $15 a month for the 9 or 10 months of the season, just to break even on what Foxtel is currently paying. Now, that's according to the CEO of Seven, who's right across all these numbers. I think KO currently has around 1 million subscribers. So, according to Mr. Warburton, Paramount would need roughly 3 times the number of subscribers just to break even on that deal. So I know that the value of these things is talked up, and there's no doubt that the AFL will get a bumper TV deal, but that just gives some context to all those numbers. Some discussion overnight also regarding the Tasmanian situation and movement towards a decision. Throwing forward, I think the key issue in regards to Tasmania will be this word, perpetuity. That is, the length of time the Tasmanian government can guarantee that they'll underwrite the cost of a Tasmanian team. The club presidents are set to make a decision as soon as August. I still think that's ambitious given they'll want data on the players' pay deal and the club funding deal first, but I think it's highly unlikely that a number of the clubs, and that it needs the club's approval, at least 66%, arguably 75% approval, but I think it's highly unlikely that the clubs would sign off on the Tasmanian decision if the Tasmanian government couldn't guarantee that team and the costs of it for a long period of time. There's some talk around a 3, 5, 7-year guarantee. I'm not sure that would be long enough because I don't think the big clubs, and Collingwood's on record as saying this in recent weeks, would sign off a blank cheque for a repeat of the costs of the Suns or the Giants. So that's going to become a hot issue in the next 2.5 months. I think you'll hear that buzzword, perpetuity, or at least how long Tasmania will guarantee that deal. And I'll just finish with the Bombers. They've been the focus this week a lot. They're 1-6. My summary of this situation is that some of their issues will go away if they can beat Hawthorn on the weekend. That's just the nature of footy. It's applied to the Giants. It's applied to Port, even with one win in recent weeks. It just calms the farm in terms of the pressure. I think there'll be significant pressure on the club to conduct some type of informal or formal footy review if they go to 1-7 or indeed 1-8. That'll really ramp up next week if they can't beat Hawthorn this weekend. I think there's a couple of aspects to this discussion now. I think it's important my view is the Bombers stay aligned. If they don't, they're going to be in trouble. You know, they've gone through coaches and all sorts of stuff, really since Kevin Sheedy left. So again, it's a test for the stability and alignment of the club. Just to emphasise there, the club's well run. Paul Brash as the president does a great job. Xavier Campbell, the CEO, he was chased by the AFL again, highly regarded. But just speaking to various sources this week, I think there's now a strong trade debate about the merits of their trading, and there's a strong footy debate about some of the coaching aspects to what's going on. The danger here is the departments start blaming each other, which is no signs of that just yet. But just from a trading perspective, I noticed there was some criticism of their trading, and in particular Adrian Dodoro on the tally on Monday. Some of that might be legitimate, but I guess my points on that, my observations this week, would be that they knew, the Bombers and the supporters knew, and the football public knew, that they'd been to the draft the last 2 years and chased kids. They had money for free agency. They could have gone after free agents, but they elected to go and get Hobbs, Cox, Perkins and Reid, which really sets the club up well for when and if Tasmania come in particular, because the draft will be compromised, and Essendon's deliberately gone young. That was a deliberate strategy that all the departments out of the Bombers knew they were on. There was some debate regarding the Dylan Shield selection. Yep, Essendon gave up 2 first-round picks. It doesn't look unbelievably good now. Having said that, other clubs are into Shield. He was an All-Australian or 2017 All-Australian at the time. And if you look deeper at that, the Bombers did give up, I think, an 18 and a 19 first round. They got back a 2019 second round. So that was the net effect, wasn't 2 first-rounders. And Essendon then went and chased Caldwell, which the Giants used with one of those picks, and got him back for about, so I think it was pick 29 and a future second round, and the Bombers got a couple of later picks back for Caldwell. So, in essence, the Shield deal wasn't as expensive as some people say, and they, somewhat ironically or through good planning, got Caldwell back. So, the net effect of that wasn't that bad. Also, Smith, Stringer and Sard, the net effect of that, in effect, in the end, was really a shuffle of first-round picks, and they got a pick 9 back, I think, for Sard. So, again, if you look at that in totality, it wasn't as bad. They've also had some retention issues. Joe Danaher, I think it's reasonably well documented, left because I don't think he liked the attention of playing at such a big club, loves playing in Brisbane, and Sard, in the end, really left because he wanted to play a different role, not playing out of full back, and he just wanted to play, I think, more up on half back or on a wing. So they were the reasons that he left. So retention, though, has been a persistent issue at the Bombers for a long period of time. If you flip the card to the footy side, I'm hearing the word instinct a lot, whether the players, in particular the midfield, are playing on an instinct under their system. That's a question for Ben Rutten. And also, I guess, a question for the coaching group is why haven't some of the players improved, most notably Smith, who's gone off big time, and Shield, who's gone off as well. As I mentioned, he's an All-Australian, and now, well, at least last week, he was fighting for a spot in the side. So there's a couple of question marks from a footy perspective for the coaching group. Do they need more help? Do they need a football sort of leader out there like a Choco Williams or someone like that within the group? I guess they're questions for Ben Rutten, but it's very important in my view that the Bombers stay aligned. That's just some insight into some of the discussion points this week. Mitch Cleary also reported on 7 News this week that a member of the midfield or a member of the playing group had gone to the coaches questioning whether they'd done enough contested work in the pre-season. I think it was the strong view of Josh Marnie out of the club. They'd done a record amount according to all their data. So they're all the discussion points. Some of these points go away if they can beat Hawthorn, or sort of all of them, if they can beat Hawthorn this weekend. But I think that Paul Brash or someone like that would be well placed to conduct at least an informal footy review and start to look into some of those issues in a more detailed fashion if they go 1-7 or indeed 1-8. So that's sort of my best summation of the situation at Essendon this week as it stands.